We walked back east on 46th Street toward our neighborhood. The Saturday afternoon city. People on the street. The specific normality of the street after the specific non-normality of the room. I said, "Clara?" She said, I said, "Those were really police officers." She said, "Yes." I said, "Why were they there?" She was quiet for a moment. Not the quiet of someone who doesn't know. The quiet of someone who is deciding how much to tell an 11-year-old. She said, "Because they get paid to be there." I said, "Paid by who?" She said, "The man who runs the place." I said, "And then nobody arrests anybody?" She said, "That's right." I said, "Does everyone know about this?" She said, "Vera." She looked at me with the expression that she sometimes had when I asked questions she found difficult to answer. Not impatient, thoughtful. She said, "Most people know about it." I said, "And nobody does anything?" She said, "What would you do?" I did not have an answer to that. I thought about it for the rest of the walk home. I thought about it for several years after. I am still, in certain ways, thinking about it. What would you do? At 44, I have something like an answer. Not a complete answer. I am not sure there is a complete answer to that question as applied to a systemic corruption of the kind I am describing. But something. You would stop patronizing it. This is the most direct answer and the most difficult one. The Speakeasy could not have existed without customers. The customers, the people at the tables, the business-suited men, Clara, eventually me, were the market that the Speakeasy served. Without the market, the Speakeasy had no reason to exist. But the customers wanted to drink. The law had made drinking illegal. The alternative to the Speakeasy was not drinking. For many people, this was not an alternative they were willing to accept. This is the circular trap of Prohibition. You cannot simply stop patronizing the Speakeasy without giving up the thing the Speakeasy provides. And giving up the thing the Speakeasy provides requires accepting a law that a significant portion of the population considered unjust. You would report it. To whom? The police were at the bar. The politicians who oversaw the police were receiving a portion of the proceeds. The courts were populated, in some cases, by judges whose appointments had been arranged by the same political machine that was organized around the corruption. Reporting it to the system was reporting it to the system that had organized the corruption. This is not a hypothetical. People did try to report. The women's temperance organizations, certain honest law enforcement officers, reform politicians. The reports were made. The investigations were occasionally opened. The results were, through most of the Prohibition period, minimal. What would you do? You would be outraged. And then you would go home. And then, the next Saturday, some of you would come back. This is not cynicism. This is what the historical record shows. I described in episode 3 the 5 families and their relationship to the city. I want to describe it differently here, from the ground level, from the level of what an ordinary citizen was actually agreeing to when they went to the Speakeasy. The collective bargain of New York during Prohibition was something like this. We, the citizens, want to drink. The law says we cannot. We have decided that this law is wrong and that we will not follow it. We will patronize establishments that provide what the law prohibits. We will tolerate the corruption that is necessary to maintain those establishments, the payments to police, the payments to politicians, the entire chain of corruption that the Speakeasy requires to operate. We will tolerate this because the alternative, accepting the law, not drinking, is worse, from our perspective, than the corruption. This is a rational individual calculation. It is a catastrophic, collective one. Because the corruption that was accepted to maintain the speakeasy, the corruption of the police, the courts, the political machine, was not contained to the speakeasy. The organizations that were built to manage the corruption of prohibition enforcement did not stop at alcohol. They moved, as I described in episode 1, to gambling, to labor, to construction, to all the other industries I described in episode 3. The corruption that New York accepted to drink was the corruption that ran the city for decades. The 11-year-old girl who sat in the speakeasy on West 46th Street and felt the excitement of the broken rule. She was, in that moment, participating in the bargain. She did not know it. She knows it now. New York had approximately 30,000 speakeasies in the late 1920s. 30,000 rooms like the one on West 46th Street. Multiply this across the country. Chicago, which had an estimated 10,000 speakeasies, Detroit, which was a particular center of bootlegging because of its proximity to Canada across the Detroit River. Canadian whiskey crossed the river in boats, in cars driven across the frozen water in winter, in tunnels that were dug specifically for the purpose. Philadelphia, Baltimore, Boston. Every major American city had its specific version of the arrangement I am describing. The aggregate? Millions of rooms, millions of customers, millions of individual decisions to accept the bargain. The aggregate corruption that these decisions supported was correspondingly enormous. And this was not, I want to be clear about this, a case where the corruption was hidden from the people making the decisions. The speakeasy was, by definition, visible to its customers. The customers knew they were in an illegal establishment. They knew that the establishment was maintained by corrupt payments. The police at the bar made this explicit. They went anyway. Millions of them. Every night. For 13 years. This is one of the most significant episodes of collective self-deception in American history, and it has never received the attention it deserves because the self-deception was so complete and so comfortable that the people who participated in it never fully acknowledged what they were participating in. I want to tell you what happened to Clara. Clara was 6 years older than I was. She died in 1943. She was 32 years old. The cause was tuberculosis, not an uncommon death for a woman of her generation and circumstances. She never married. She worked in an office for most of her adult life. She was funny and intelligent, and she had a specific way of laughing that I can still hear when I try. She was 16 years old when she took me to the Speakeasy on West 46th Street. I have been thinking about that 16-year-old for 33 years. She was not bad. She was not a criminal. She was a 16-year-old girl in a city that had decided that the rule against drinking was a rule worth breaking. And she had accepted the city's decision, and she had gone to the Speakeasy the way people went to the Speakeasy, because it was there, and it was where things happened, and the alternative was sitting at home. She was not exceptional in her acceptance of the bargain. She was typical. What made her exceptional? She took me. She thought the room was interesting enough to show to an 11-year-old cousin. She thought it was worth seeing. She was right. It was worth seeing. I saw it. I have been thinking about it ever since. I want to say what the room did to me, the specific effect of being in it at 11 years old. It gave me what I can only call an early education in the difference between the official version of things and the actual version of things. The official version. Prohibition is the law. Alcohol is illegal. The police enforce the law. The actual version. The police are at the bar in the Speakeasy. The gap between those two versions, the gap that I saw clearly at 11 years old, that Clara showed me by taking me into the room, this gap has been part of my thinking ever since. Not cynicism. The gap is real, But the existence of the gap does not mean that the official version is irrelevant or that the law is merely fiction. The law is not merely fiction. The police at the bar did not believe that their presence in the speakeasy was acceptable. If they had believed it was acceptable, they would not have been in uniform jackets when they arrived and taken the jackets off at the bar. The slight concealment was the evidence that they knew they were doing something wrong. The omission of the jacket was the residue of the conscience. The law existed. The corruption existed alongside it. Both were real. Both shaped what the city was. This is the complexity that the 11-year-old in the speakeasy began to understand, and that the 44-year-old is still working out. She finishes the coffee. She is quiet for a moment. Not the quiet of someone who has run out of things to say, but the quiet of someone who has arrived at the end of a memory and is returning from it. She looks at the window. West 54th Street in November 1960. She looks at you. The building on West 46th Street is still there. I walked past it last month. Not to commemorate anything. I walk past many streets in this city, and some of them contain rooms I was once in. This one I noticed because I had been thinking for the first time in several years about the afternoon when Clara took me there. The building, still standing. The basement. I don't know what is in it now. A storage room, probably. An office. Something ordinary. The room that was there in 1927 is gone in the sense that all rooms go. The physical space remains, the specific arrangement of people and conversation and music, and the police officers at the bar has dissolved, as all moments dissolve, into what came after. What came after was 1933 and the end of Prohibition, and the organizations moving on to other things. And then the decades I am describing in this series, and now 1960. The room is gone. What the room produced is still operating. The organizations that the room was paying, the organizations whose payments made the room possible, these are still operating in 1960. They have changed their products. They have changed their personnel. They are more sophisticated and more embedded in legitimate business than they were in 1927. But they are operating. The piano that was playing in the basement on West 46th Street in the spring of 1927 has stopped. The organization that the piano was playing for is still running the city. I was 11 years old, and I felt the warmth of the broken rule. I am 44 years old, and I know what the warmth cost. Come back for the next episode. Lucky Luciano, the man who modernized what I saw in that room, who took the arrangements that the speakeasy required, the payments to police, the corruption of courts, the management of violence, and turned them into a national organization with a board of directors, who was sent to prison and then deported, and who continued to run his organization from Naples until his death, who was, in the judgment of federal law enforcement, one of the most significant criminals in American history, who was also the man who cooperated with the United States Navy during the Second World War. Both. Come back.